while Junwan and Rose were quietly brooding over the question that haunted them, why Han Doyoung had killed his own sister. Doyoung himself was in a very different mood. He sat in his private study, swirling a glass of deep red wine beneath the warm glow of an antique lamp. The silence of the room was broken only by the occasional creak of the old leather chair as he shifted, savoring the moment. He had just received word. His precious little nephew had seen him in the act. Doyoung let the thought settle in his mind like aged scotch. No panic. No surprise. Just a calculated calm. After all, if he had eliminated the mother to keep her quiet, what difference would the son make? He took another slow sip, letting the bitterness bloom across his tongue. Messy business, he thought, but loose ends always are. Then his phone rang. He didn't flinch. He had been expecting this call. He waited for it to ring once before answering with smooth precision. A voice on the other end said, "It's done. Your sister's shares are now in your name. Also, we acquired additional shares, more than anticipated." Han Doyoung's lips curled into a slow, cold smile. He set the wine glass down carefully and leaned back in his chair, eyes gleaming. This is what it feels like to take what should have always been yours. 1 week later, the crochet shop had truly become Sangwoo's haven. Each day after therapy, he would quietly settle by the window, yarn in his lap, and continue stitching the evolving scene on his blanket. His hands moved with a steady rhythm now, confident, deliberate. Rose often watched him from her corner of the room. Her own hook paused mid-stitch as she observed his silent focus. He had already crocheted the figure of a woman lying in a pool of red yarn, the expression of shock and pain frozen on her yarn-woven face. Every detail was exact, too exact. And now, today, he was finishing the final piece. Junwan arrived earlier than usual to pick up Rose and Sangwoo. But when he stepped inside and saw his son at work, he moved quietly to stand beside Rose. Neither of them said a word. They just watched. Sangwoo's small hands trembled slightly as he threaded the last strands. Then, with a quiet sigh, he set the hook down. The scene was complete. There, crocheted into the soft, colorful yarn, stood a tall man with narrowed eyes and a twisted smile. Draped over his shoulders was a charcoal gray coat. Unmistakable. The same coat Han Doyoung had worn when he visited just a week ago. Rose's hand flew to her mouth, her breath caught in her throat. Junwan stepped forward slowly, lowering himself beside his son. "Sangwoo," he asked gently, "who is this?" The boy hesitated. Then he picked up his notepad and scribbled with shaking hands. "Uncle Han Doyoung. He hurt Mommy." Junwan's world tilted. The air grew heavy, suffocating. Fury warred with heartbreak in his chest as the truth he had feared finally took form. Rose's voice broke the silence, raw and trembling. "He's finally said what he saw that night." But Sangwoo didn't cry. He didn't tremble. Instead, he wrote again, his strokes more deliberate this time, and it read, "Can he be arrested since this is evidence? I couldn't save Mommy that night, Daddy. But this time, I can fight for her." Junwan gently placed a hand on his son's small shoulder. "Don't worry. Leave this to Daddy," he whispered, his voice cracking. "And Sangwoo, if your mom were here, she would never blame you. You've done more than enough. You've given her a voice." Rose knelt beside them, her eyes brimming with tears. "You're very brave, Sangwoo. So brave. And you've done an amazing job." The boy gave a quiet nod, then carefully folded the blanket and held it close to his chest. After a long moment of silence and shared grief, Junwan stood and stepped away to make a call. He dialed the number of the private investigator he had quietly hired 2 years ago, Detective Min Jae. When Min Jae answered, Junwan's voice was low, steady, and resolute. "My son just gave us something. A crochet blanket. It clearly depicts the murder scene. And the murderer is his uncle, Han Doyoung." There was a pause. Then Min Jae said, "Bring it to me." "I'll be there shortly," Junwan replied and ended the call. Next, he contacted his personal secretary, Mr. Seo Jungo. "Come pick me up from the crochet shop," Junwan instructed. Then he turned to Rose. "The driver who brought me will take you and Sangwoo home." Rose then nodded, and then he knelt once more before Sangwoo. "I need to take the blanket," he said softly. "With this, we can send your uncle to prison. We can get justice for your mom." Sangwoo looked down at the blanket in his arms. Slowly, he extended it to his father. "Thank you," Junwan said, taking it carefully, reverently, like sacred evidence. A few minutes later, Seo Jungo arrived. Junwan left with him, the blanket safely in hand. Meanwhile, the driver opened the car door for Rose and Sangwoo. They slipped inside, and the quiet drive back to the mansion began. When Junwan and Seo Jungo arrived at Detective Min Jae's office, the man was already waiting for him, seated behind his desk, eyes shadowed under the soft pool of lamplight. Junwan took the chair across from him, laying the folded blanket carefully on the desk between them. Behind him, Seo Jungo stood silently, hands clasped tightly behind his back, expression unreadable. Min Jae leaned forward slowly, fingers brushing across the textured yarn. His eyes scanned the crocheted scene, pausing at the twisted smile, the pool of red yarn beneath the woman's form, and finally, the charcoal gray coat. He leaned back in his chair, releasing a long, thoughtful breath. "It's impressive," he murmured. "But Junwan, this won't hold up as evidence in court." Junwan didn't flinch. He had expected this. "I know," he said quietly, his fingers curling slightly into fists. "It means something." Min Jae nodded, though his face remained serious. "Emotionally? Yes. Legally?" He shook his head. "This is a child's expression, no matter how vivid. Courts will see it as imagination or trauma-fueled storytelling unless we have concrete evidence to back it." Paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "And don't forget, the investigation 2 years ago cleared Han Doyoung. He was in Singapore. We all saw the reports." Junwan nodded slowly, jaw tightening. "Yes. Passport stamps, flight records, even CCTV from the hotel. Everything checked out. That's what had haunted him most." Seo Jungo finally spoke, his voice quiet but deliberate. If the timing was manipulated, could he have hired someone? Maybe he flew back under another identity? Private jet. Min Jae didn't dismiss it, but he stayed cautious. Possibly. But without something new, something to unravel his alibi, we're stuck with circumstantial suspicion. Silence hung heavy in the room. Then Junwan leaned forward, eyes locked on the investigators. "Then we dig," he said. "We dig until something breaks. I want his every move rechecked. Every flight. Every hotel security feed. Every call. Go back to the week before it happened. Look for gaps. Patterns. Anything." Min Jae met his gaze, then nodded solemnly. "I'll start again tonight." Junwan turned to Seo Jungo. "And you check the company records. See if Doyoung had anyone working off the books. Anyone close enough to do his bidding but invisible in the system. Start with people who vanished shortly after the murder." "Yes, sir," Seo Jungo replied. Junwan stood slowly, taking one last look at the blanket on the desk. The twisted smile on the crocheted figure seemed to glow under the lamplight, like a ghost mocking him. "He might have hidden his tracks well," Junwan muttered. "But my son remembered. His silence protected a killer. Not anymore." He turned toward the door, and both men followed. The mansion was quiet when Junwan returned. The soft click of the front door echoed slightly as he stepped inside. He found Rose sitting on the couch in the dimly lit living room. Her hands were clasped in her lap, eyes heavy with concern. She stood as soon as she saw him. "You're back," she said gently. Junwan gave a tired nod, setting his coat aside. "Yeah." She looked at him for a long moment. "How did it go?" He exhaled, voice low. "Just as expected. The blanket, it's not enough. Not legally." Rose's face fell slightly, though she didn't look surprised. "But it's something," he added, stepping closer. "It's a thread. And I told them to start pulling. I won't stop until we find what's at the other end." She reached out, gently touching his arm. "You're doing everything you can, Junwan." "I have to," he whispered. "For her. For Sangwoo." Rose nodded, then said quietly, "He waited up for you. But he fell asleep on the couch an hour ago. I took him to his room." A faint smile touched Junwan's lips. "Good. He deserves some peace tonight." There was a pause, comforting, solemn. Then she said softly, "Good night." "Good night, Rose." And as she turned to leave, Junwan stood alone in the quiet again. But this time not lost, just waiting for the storm to shift. The next 2 days brought a quiet, beautiful shift. Sangwoo was different now, not completely changed, but lighter, freer. The shadows in his eyes had thinned, replaced with a flicker of light that hadn't been there in years. He began speaking, small words at first. "Thank you, Rose." His voice was soft, uncertain, like testing new wings. But each time he spoke, his confidence grew. Rose noticed it first during their morning sessions. At therapy, she sat beside him, gently repeating sounds, syllables, and short words. She would smile with every correct pronunciation, and he would beam in return. It became a game between them, one he was quickly mastering. By the end of the second day, he was stringing together short sentences. "Want water, please?" "Rose, help me." It was the simple phrases, but they were music to everyone's ears. At the crochet shop, he was unrecognizable. The once quiet, withdrawn child now greeted customers with a bright smile and curious eyes. He moved between tables with ease, sometimes showing off his stitching, sometimes peering at others' projects and offering an enthusiastic pretty or nice color. People started calling him the little manager of the shop. Some customers who came in just to browse or out of simple curiosity found themselves walking out with yarn bundles, thanks to Sangwoo. He'd hold up a crocheted animal or blanket, look them straight in the eye, and say, "You make very nice." His charm was impossible to resist. Rose watched him from behind the counter, her heart swelling with pride and quiet awe. There he was, this brave little boy, once locked inside silence and pain, now glowing with joy and purpose. He had found his voice, and with it, he was beginning to find the world again. That evening, back at the mansion, Junwon stepped through the front door and paused when he heard the sound of small, excited footsteps rushing down the stairs. "Daddy!" Sangwoo called out. Junwon froze. It was the first time he had ever heard his son say that word aloud. His throat tightened. "Sangwoo!" he whispered, eyes wide. The boy ran to him and hugged his waist, looking up with a proud smile. "I speak now," he said, cheeks glowing. Junwon dropped to his knees, cupping his son's face in trembling hands. You said it. You really said it." Sangwoo nodded. "I speak for Mommy. And for me." Emotions swelled in Junwon's chest, relief, pride, grief, joy, all crashing into one another. He pulled his son into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you," he choked. So proud of you, my boy." Rose stood a few steps behind, quietly watching the moment unfold, her hand resting over her heart. It was more than a breakthrough. It was a miracle. Sangwoo had found his voice. One Friday night, Junwon had finished eating and stepped away from the dining area, leaving his phone behind on the table. Rose had already retired to her room for the night, and Sangwoo remained behind, sitting quietly and sipping the last of his juice. Then his father's phone rang. He glanced at it. The screen lit up, "Grandma." With a small, excited smile, Sangwoo reached for the phone and answered it with newfound confidence. "Hello," he said, voice soft but clear. There was a stunned silence. Then, from the other end, a gasp of pure joy. "Sangwoo, is that really you?" "Yes, Grandma," he said, smile stretching wider. "It's me." "Oh my heavens, baby, you're talking." Her voice trembled with emotion. "I can't believe it. You sound so strong, so beautiful." Sangwoo giggled. "I speak now. With Rose. And Daddy." Tears filled the old woman's eyes as she sat on the other end of the line. "I'm so proud of you. Oh, sweetheart, this is the best gift you could have ever given me." Just then, Junwon returned to the room to retrieve his phone, and stopped in his tracks when he saw his son, chatting softly. He stood quietly for a moment as he watched his son talk. Sangwoo noticed him and looked up, beaming. Into the phone, he said, "Daddy's here now." Junwon stepped forward and gently took the phone. "Mom." Her voice was thick with tears. "Bring him to me tomorrow, Junwon. Please. Bring my grandson." Junwon's expression softened. "He'll be there." "Thank you," she whispered. When the call ended, he knelt beside Sangwoo. "That was fantastic, Sangwoo." Sangwoo looked at him, his eyes shining with pride. "She's happy." Junwon wrapped his arms around him, holding him close. "Yes," he murmured, his voice catching. "She really is." The next morning, the sleek black car pulled into the spacious driveway of Junwon's family estate. The manicured lawns and white stone pillars stood tall in quiet grandeur, just as they always had. Rose stepped out first, helping Sangwoo from the back seat. The boy grinned up at the house, then slipped his hand into hers without hesitation. Junwon walked ahead, shoulders squared, a strange mix of nerves and quiet resolve in his stride. The front doors opened before they even knocked. His mother rushed out, arms outstretched. "Sangwoo!" she cried, kneeling to embrace her grandson tightly. "Oh, look at you, how tall you've grown." "Grandma," Sangwoo said with a shy giggle. "I talk now." "I can see that, sweetheart," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "And you sound wonderful." His father appeared in the doorway, hands folded behind his back. He offered Junwon a curt nod. Toward Rose, it was colder, more measured. Inside the house, the mood softened. Sangwoo spoke freely, asking questions, showing off his crochet pieces, even pulling his grandfather into conversation. Laughter soon filled the room as he and Rose battled each other in a football video game on the big screen. In the adjacent sitting room, Junwon poured tea for his mother. She accepted the cup but didn't drink. Instead, she looked at her son. "He's come so far, Junwon. I barely recognize the boy who used to hide behind your legs." "He's healing," Junwon said quietly, eyes still on his son. She hesitated. Have you thought about remarrying? He glanced at her. Mom, I'm not pressuring you, she continued softly. But he needs more than therapy. He needs warmth, presence, someone who'll be there at breakfast and bedtime. Someone permanent. Junwan's eyes flicked toward Rose, then back to his mother. You know, I've thought about it. But it's not that simple. His father's voice cut in, sharp and firm. It's simple enough. If she's the one you're thinking about, he nodded toward the other room. She's not one of us. Junwan clenched his jaw. Before he could respond, his mother snapped back. She's exactly what our grandson needs. Can't you see that? She's a stranger. She's family, she said without hesitation. Whether you like it or not, she's the one who brought Sangwoo back to life. And anyone has the right to marry whom they fall in love with. Silence stretched in the room. In the living room, Sangwoo's laughter rang out as Rose raised her hands in mock victory. He tackled her in a fit of giggles, the soft glow of the TV lighting their joy. Junwan watched the scene for a long, quiet moment. Then he murmured, almost to himself, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know what matters now. While Junwan was still watching Sangwoo and Rose, lost in the quiet comfort of their laughter, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, his expression shifting. Quietly, he stepped out of the room and answered. Yes. His secretary's voice came through, clipped and urgent. Sir, Han Doyoung's been moving aggressively. He's acquired his late sister's shares, legally though the methods were questionable. And he's bought out several minor shareholders. Junwan's jaw tightened. Meaning? A pause. He's now the highest shareholder. For a moment, silence. Then Junwan's voice dropped, calm and cold. Then take back the rest. Reach out to the remaining shareholders. Offer more if you must. I want control back before midnight. Yes, sir. He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket, the warmth from earlier now gone, replaced by a calculating stillness. Later that evening, back at his own mansion, the phone rang again. This time, his secretary's voice carried a hint of triumph. It's done. The others agreed. As of this minute, you're the largest shareholder again. A slow, satisfied smile curved Junwan's lips. Well done. He hung up and walked to the window, the night outside calm, deceptively calm. Tomorrow was the executive and shareholders' meeting. He folded his arms, eyes narrowing. Han Doyoung, let's see the look on your face when the ground shifts beneath your feet. The morning sun gleamed against the sleek black car as it pulled into the towering headquarters of the conglomerate. Han Doyoung stepped out, straightening his tailored suit. A smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth. Today was his day. His rise had been calculated. And now it was inevitable. Inside the boardroom, the long glass table shimmered under the recessed lighting. Executives and shareholders murmured in hushed tones. A few nodded politely in Doyoung's direction, respectful but wary. At the front, Junwan's secretary, Seo Jungo, rose and tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice crisp and even. We're here to confirm updated shareholder standings following recent transactions. Doyoung adjusted his cufflinks, barely suppressing a smile. He was ready. Jungo scanned the room, then delivered the blow. As of this morning, the largest shareholder is... A deliberate pause. Mr. Baek Junwan. Silence fell like shattered glass. Doyoung's eyes blinked in disbelief. His fingers tightened around the armrest. Slowly, he turned toward Junwan, seated across the table, calm, composed, with a faint, knowing smirk on his lips. That smirk said, checkmate. Murmurs rippled across the room. Jungo continued smoothly. Mr. Han Doyoung now holds the second largest share. Doyoung's jaw clenched. He gave a tight nod, but the rage was unmistakable in his eyes. Later, in a quiet corridor outside the boardroom, Junwan was speaking quietly to his secretary when Doyoung approached, his footsteps sharp and deliberate. You're more slippery than I thought, Doyoung said coldly. Junwan didn't flinch. He turned to face him fully. You killed my wife, didn't you? Doyoung's grin was slow and venomous. You'll need proof. Junwan's voice hardened. I'll find it, Doyoung. Doyoung leaned in, his tone almost playful. Then start by proving I was even in the country that night. He turned to leave, but paused, glancing over his shoulder. Oh, and I hear my dear nephew can talk now. That's inconvenient. Junwan stepped closer, eyes narrowing. What are you going to do? Doyoung feigned thought, then said lightly. I'll give you a fair chance, brother. Make sure you've got people protecting your son, and that woman you've fallen for. He paused dramatically, as if trying to recall. What's her name again? Ah yes, he snapped his fingers. Rose Amponsah. He flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Protect them well, Junwan. After all, his voice dropped to a cruel whisper, I wouldn't want to be called a bully. And with that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing ominously down the marble corridor. Junwan stood motionless, fists clenched at his sides, fury churning like a storm beneath his skin. He turned sharply to his secretary. Assign full security. Rose and Sangwoo. Immediately. The secretary hesitated. Sir, did you hear what he said? Junwan gave a slow nod. I heard. A beat of silence occurred before Jungo spoke again. He called you brother. Junwan then froze as the word echoed in his mind like a sudden, crashing wave. Brother.